like to play some football?
And welcome to a brand new season of Gridiron and the Gospel of Faith in College Football podcast. Finally, 2025, the football season has arrived. I always say there are two seasons, football season and waiting for football season, and kickoff is finally here. My name is George Schroeder, and I am glad to be hosting this. And we've gotten back to the best season, but we've got a couple of changes to talk about. And first thing I need to say is I'm really excited to be joined by Dean Inserra, friend of the podcast for many years now, or for all of the 2 years we've been doing this. And also, he's going to help host all season long. So I'm really grateful for that. Brad Edwards has, he and I have had some great conversations of the off season, and Brad wants to step back and just join us occasionally. So Dean is kind enough to say, hey, I'll jump in with you. And I don't know if you really know what you're getting into, Dean, but thanks for joining the podcast as a host.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm no Brad Edwards, but I'm really honored to be a part of it. My two favorite topics, are we're going to be faith and football. So I can talk about those things all day and can't wait to jump in.
Yeah. So I guess real quick, you've been on the show 2, 3, 4 times, different times, the podcast. Tell people a little bit about, before we get into, and we're going to get into sort of, the main kickoff starts this weekend, Thursday. Basically, we're going to have the Football Palooza that always is opening week. We had Farmageddon in Dublin last weekend in week 0. But before we get into all the things we want to talk about, tell people a little bit about yourself. You're a pastor in Tallahassee. It's a place where college football really, 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 really matters. But you're not a Knoll, even though you grew up there, right? You're not a Seminole.
Yeah, I live in Tallahassee and the pastor of City Church here in this town. Very connected to all things Florida State because of the church. But my family has had season tickets for Miami football since 1956. So my boys are fourth-generation season ticket holders, which is really neat. And just been around college football my whole life. My grandfather, my dad, both huge college football fans. And one of the things we do for fun, my boys and I like travel and go to games. That's like what we do. That's like our kind of fun thing we do together. We're not the fishing family or the hunting family or the playing golf family. We're the go and travel to college football games family. So some of my favorite things to talk about. I love the history of the game. I was kind of a lay historian of it, and keep up to date on what's going on in the present as well pretty closely.
All right, so I don't know much about South Florida in 1956, but was that like the old Orange Bowl, or was the old Orange Bowl not even built yet?
It was the old Orange Bowl, yeah. Okay. And so mine used to play their home games on Friday night, which is pretty unique. Yeah, and so it was really a startup program. It kind of went through ins and outs. There were certain times it almost got defunded. There's times that it was on really doing well and very popular because a lot of people don't realize that the Hurricanes existed long before the Dolphins did in South Florida. So a lot of old-time Miami Hurricane fans aren't even Dolphin fans. They're Canes fans. Old Miami people, like my grandfather, my dad, for example, would be people that were Canes and not Dolphins.
So how is it that is your family originally from South Florida? How are they Miami fans?
Yeah, so back when there was a big job boom in South Florida, everybody across the country was moving there. My grandpa moved in the early 50s from Pennsylvania to South Florida after the war. So my dad was a year old. So my dad was raised there in Fort Lauderdale, and we didn't move to Tallahassee till I was a young kid. But my dad grew up there, and so did my mom.
Okay, well, great. So Dean, when it comes to college football, you're just to continue to talk with you here. But what's your favorite or earliest memory of a college football experience?
So I remember going to the Miami Florida game with Vinny Testaverde during the year before Vinny's main Heisman year. I remember going to Miami, Oklahoma, in the Brian Bosworth game, the regular season game. And then my grandfather took me in 1990 to Catholics versus Convicts 3 at South Bend. And I have a very strong memory of that game and that road trip we did together. I've been to all the wide rights of Miami and Florida State, but that South Bend trip I really remember well, going with my grandpa to see Miami Notre Dame. And Rocket Ismail returned to kickoff late in the game to go ahead, and Notre Dame wound up winning the game, and they went on to have a really strong year. And that's the year they lost to Colorado. And then when Rocket's return got called back for a block in the back in the Orange Bowl against Bill McCartney's Colorado team with Darian Hagan, Eric Bieniemy, those guys, when Colorado won the national championship.
So when you go to South Bend and you're a Miami fan, do they treat you well? I mean, you said it was Catholics Convicts 3. There's some bad blood between the programs.
Yeah, I went to two of the three. I went to 89 in the Orange Bowl when Notre Dame was number one and Miami won the game, which propelled Miami to go play Alabama in the Sugar Bowl in the national championship with Dennis Erickson as the head coach, his first season with Miami. But Notre Dame fans, I mean, the students during Catholic first convicts were really hostile. But Notre Dame fans are known to be actually really nice. Like I've been back a bunch since then, like several times, and they're always just a really friendly fan base. So Notre Dame, if you're looking for hostility and loudness, that's not what South Bend's about. But if you want everything else that matters about college football, you want the tradition, you want all the feels, the nostalgia, there's really nothing like it. So for all our listeners out there, if you could do one trip, and I've been to a lot of places, I know you have too, George, longtime USA Today college football writer, like you were, I recommend a home game on campus at South Bend. Doesn't matter what Notre Dame's record is, doesn't matter who they're playing, there's truly nothing like it.
Yeah, I've only had a chance to be there, I think, twice, maybe three times, but twice for games. I would go and visit sometimes in the off season and talk with Brian Kelly at the time, but of course now at LSU. But you're right; it's a special place, and it feels sort of retro in a lot of ways, just the way the stadium is built and everything else. But boy, they love the Irish. There's no question about that.
It's incredible. You just feel like you're in the scene of Rudy while you're walking campus. You really do.
All right, 2025, long off season is over, as I said earlier. Did you get a chance to watch? And so, look, most of the time these will drop on Monday mornings. As you know, people who've been listening know this, and new to the podcast, you don't know this. We'll try to drop them on Monday mornings after and we'll talk about whatever happened over the weekend, and then we'll probably look forward to the next weekend. But did you watch Week 0? Did you watch Farmageddon? Or are you kind of a guy who's going to wait for the main thing to happen this week?
Oh, I'm a huge rivalry guy, and I actually didn't love one of the longest continuous rivalries in all of college football being played in Ireland. I mean, I think it's probably neat for the players and the fan base that got to go and the coaching staff and their families. But I want Farmageddon on campus. Did you ever cover Farmageddon as a reporter?
Never have, because here's the thing, and if you watch the broadcast, I thought the ESPN crew did a really nice job of talking about this. These are two programs that have not been – K-State's been good longer, but neither one of them has been consistently good for a long time, certainly not together. Really, Matt Campbell is the guy who's really gotten Iowa State to where they had one little dip, but he's the one guy who's consistently won there. And we all know Bill Snyder, got K-State rolling in the 90s, but there just weren't as many opportunities to go see either of those programs too much. I've been to both places several times, but I've never seen them play each other.
Yeah, because in the Big 8 days, they were terrible. Snyder didn't really start winning until the Big 12. Maybe a little bit before then, but they were both just terrible. It was Dan McCartney that had the little run with Seneca Wallace for a minute. But they're just two programs. But that's what I love about college football is two programs that really kind of have been irrelevant, relative, again, minus the Snyder good years with Michael Bishop, people like that, Darren Sproles, but teams that have been largely irrelevant on the national scene, but the game still matters. The rivalry still matters. And that's what makes college football so great.
Well, I love what you said earlier about how a rivalry game ought to be played on campus or in a traditional venue. I get that. I thought two things, though, when you said that. One is I'm glad it wasn't one of these sort of glorified exhibition games, which sometimes they are. Sometimes they're fun intersectional games when they put them in Dublin or whatever, but sometimes there's not much going on. And so I love that. And the other thing I think that we saw was, and I don't know, it's so easy to overdo things after week 0 or week 1, and we inevitably will do that next week after whatever happens this week with Texas, Ohio State or something. But that looked like two teams that you could see maybe, and we'll see about injuries and stuff like that, especially for K-State, but that you could see maybe playing again in Arlington, Texas at the end of the year. I'm not trying to forecast that. The Big 12 is wide open and it's wacky and everything else. I'm just saying that's two pretty good programs. And it felt like, where I was kind of to go with that, because they were a large swath of one fan base and a large chunk of another fan base, it felt a little bit like a conference championship game to me. So I guess I didn't mind that they weren't in Ames or the Little Apple as much as you did. But it was fun. It was a fun way to get the season started. But here's what I thought. How come there's not football on every channel? How come there's not more football on? I mean, they went from that game to like a high school game after the game. And it was like withdrawals again already for me.
Yeah, what a week 0 kind of disappointing lineup. outside of Farmageddon. And Farmageddon, just because of the rivalry. I think you have to really love college football or just be really eager for the season to start to get into that game. But I love those rivalry games. But yeah, it was really, it was Tarleton State versus Portland State. Mercer and UC Davis, which I love the FCS getting a spotlight like that. But the game wound up being no contest because the weather. They didn't even conclude the game.
If you're UC Davis, you came all the way across the country. I think you were ahead, and then they just said, yeah, but we're not going to give you that win. Sorry.
That was brutal. But the best thing about that game was the Mercer uniforms. I love their white helmets and what they're wearing there. But yeah, and also I think it's strange we call it week 0. It's like the season started. Let's just call it week 1.
So they're going to get that change. They're going to move everything up, and they're going to get that change. You can sort of see the wheels turning, and all that stuff happens so slowly. The NCAA still controls sort of the regular season part of football, but they're going to get that changed, and it'll be week 1. It's going to have to be with all the way the postseason is changing. So, and then, you didn't mention Fresno State and Kansas. That was a complete, no contest, and it really served to sort of show off, I guess, to a certain extent, Kansas's new stadium, basically, or their refurbished stadium. But
and an elite quarterback. I mean, he's got a chance to be Big 12 Player of the Year.
Jalen Daniels is really good. If he can stay healthy, yeah, he's really good, no question. There's all sorts of things we could take from there, but that was week 0. It really serves to whet your appetite for this year, I think. And so, I guess I would say, what are you looking forward to this weekend? Obviously it starts on Thursday. What are you looking forward to this weekend?
Well, Miami Notre Dame as a Hurricane fan, that's biased. So, besides that, I ended up being the only game Sunday night, featured a team that was in the national championship game just several months ago, coming to Miami. And Notre Dame has had a hard time going to Miami in recent years. So, again, it was a long time ago. The last game, I think, was 2017. But I'm really looking forward to that. Another game that sticks out to me as a must-see TV is Clemson LSU.
Yeah.
LSU always gets that hype. It's like, are they going to deliver? Clemson, a ton of hype. Returning quarterback. Dabo seems that they for last year, they really were kind of underrated. He wound up really kind of in a good year at the end of the year and gave Texas a fight for a while in the playoff. I really think Clemson LSU is going to be one of those peak mid-season form, kind of games. How about you? Any games come to mind that you're going, I have to be in front of the couch, not going anywhere during this time?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the big one, right, coming up. So that I can't wait to see those guys play. But
sure.
Yeah, but no, I think Miami Notre Dame, I'm glad you mentioned that. I am really excited about Carson Beck. And I realize people are like, there's going to be a drop at quarterback. I think that's true, but I think it's actually just going to be more different at quarterback. Is that fair?
Yeah, so you can't expect him to be Cam Ward. I mean, Cam Ward, what he did last year was kind of one of a kind in terms of recent kind of quarterback history. What he did, I mean, the things he was doing, different than a Joe Burrow. It just was a different skill set than we've seen in a while, the things that Cam brings to the table. So I think Beck's the key. Now, granted, if Miami even had an average defense last year, the Canes would have been in the playoffs. So they hired the Minnesota defensive coordinator. So if that's just even just a little bit better, they can be okay because the line's going to be strong. Running game will be good. There's a lot of question mark at wide receiver. They're playing a lot of inexperienced guys. So Beck not having that experienced receiver core Miami had last year, but I think he's the key. I think the team rises and falls with Beck. So we'll see what happens. It's either Beck from 2 years ago, but also people put some stats up recently, and he got a lot of kind of hard time last year. He didn't have a bad year. When you look at his numbers, and Georgia Georgia was a playoff team, no question. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. But obviously all eyes, I think, on Sunday are going to be this weekend are going to be about one name, and that's Arch Manning.
That's right.
That's all you're going to hear about all weekend.
He's actually going to overshadow Texas at Ohio State. It's going to be Arch Manning this, Arch Manning that. And I hate that for him. Look, I think he's really, really, really good. But he better be Tom Brady good, to use a guy that we'll probably hear a little bit about on this podcast, because I know you, Dean, love Tom Brady.
Absolutely. The greatest player in the history of team sports, not just quarterback.
There you go. I love that. So better than Michael Jordan in your mind.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right, see, here we go.
Hey, Michael Jordan never won without Phil Jackson. Tom Brady won without Bill Belichick. It took him about 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's you're right about that.
That'll start a fight right there, that comment.
Yeah, and we'll get to Bill Belichick here in a minute, but Arch Manning better be Tom Brady based on the hype, right? And I don't know, is he ready for that? I don't know the answer to that. I will put it this way. The very first game, now I think Texas is obviously really, really good. I'm not saying anything there. They're ranked number 1, right? Ohio State's also really, really good. Texas is replacing a bulk of its offensive line. And this is not his first start, right? He started and he played when Quinn Ewers was injured a year ago and played fairly well. But he's going into kind of a bubbling cauldron. That's what the horseshoe is. And it's going to be revved up. Now it's going to be a noon Eastern game, 11 a.m. Central game. So it's going to be, maybe not what it could be, but it's not like they're starting, with Tarleton State, right? That's, or Sam Houston or somebody, just sort of a tune up. So I cannot wait to see that game. And here's the best thing about it. Okay. I do not want the regular season diminished. Okay. We'll talk all about what we think about playoff and this, that, and the other as we do this podcast together. But I am glad that the loser of this game, or as Les Miles would say, the team that finishes second in this game, I am glad that they're not going to be fighting a complete uphill battle to even get back in anybody's good graces the rest of the year. I do like that. So because of that, they're playing a huge intersectional game at the time when both programs are clearly one of the, two of the top 4 teams in the country, it looks like.
Yeah, one thing that always drives me crazy in a close game or a closely ranked game, you have 1 versus 2 or 2 versus 5, and the loser of the game drops. It's well, someone had to lose, and they played the number 1 team in the nation. So we're going to raise the number 4 team who just beat, Bowling Green over them because they have 1 loss, and it was to Texas. That's just, the polls are always so strange to me. And I just don't understand it. But that's going to be interesting. Ohio State's a big question mark to me. They're going to at least be, bare minimum a 10-win team, obviously, because of the talent that they have. But when you have to replace someone with a lot of experience like Will Howard, someone's got to get Jeremiah Smith the ball. When you're losing running backs like they did, 2 very good running backs, 2 NFL running backs, they're losing some studs. A very consistent wide receiver that really you couldn't leave him alone and just key on Smith. Last year. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. And then also some coaching changes. Chip Kelly's gone and Hartline goes into that role. And isn't Matt Patricia coming on as the DC?
Yeah, and you know why? Because the DC went to Penn State.
Penn State, who's getting all the hype. Let's talk about them. They're the darling of the preseason Big Ten conversation right now.
Yeah, and listen, I there's a lot to like about Penn State. Let me just say this. They bring back a seasoned quarterback who, he needs to get better, but often guys do get better as they get more experienced. He was fine. He was solid. But if he's a little bit better, they've got 2 really good running backs. They've got a ferocious defense. They've got some guys that can – I think they've got some better pass catchers. And so I think there's a lot to like about Penn State. But, boy, they are getting a lot of hype. And that's where you sort of – we were talking about Arch Manning sort of being the sort of the huge subplot. The huge subplot with Penn State, until further notice, is always going to be James Franklin. And is he able to get them over the hump? And I think it's largely unfair to him because, among other things, for years and years and years, you played in the same division as Ohio State and Michigan. And so you could be really, really good. And that's, not quite good enough to get in the 14 playoff or whatever. I just, that's a subplot. Can he win the big one? And the stats aren't great, but
he also has made Penn State relevant again, right? The only thing that made Penn State relevant for about a 20-year period was their tradition and their fan base, right? Just kind of the nostalgia of Penn State. Now Penn State, since he's been there, has been in the conversation. But yeah, it seems like he always, he definitely wins all the games he's supposed to. And there's those 2 games that fall on the schedule as the Big Ten schedule rotates, and he usually drops those 2 games. So I think really there's a lot of pressure on them this year. There really is. And he has to I don't even know what get it done means. What is this? I would think it'd be another deep playoff run. I think would have to be bare minimum. Maybe a Big Ten title, but Oregon's sitting there. Mm-hmm. Ohio State's sitting there. And the Big Ten is going to be an interesting race this year. Back to the Big 12 for a second. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because you have major Big 12 roots living in Norman, Oklahoma as long as you did. When I look at the Big 12, I see a bunch of teams that are the same. And by the same, I don't mean they do the exact same things philosophically. I mean in terms of we could name 7 teams right now that could win the Big 12.
Well, let's do it. Okay, so either of the 2 teams we just saw play, even though K-State's now a game down. Yeah. So K-State, Iowa State, or not in that order. Arizona State, which
Yes.
obviously came out of nowhere and won it last year. And they bring back Sam Levitt, the quarterback, and some. They may be more talented, they think, than they were.
Yeah,
So that's
Dillingham's
3.
not going away.
Texas Tech, which loaded up using like just saying,
Did they
"Hey,
ever?
we're going to pay everybody a bunch of money. Come to us," and good for them. They're using the system they have. So Texas Tech,
They better win or he's in trouble with all that money
yeah,
they spent. That's the one catch. Kansas, because of Daniels and their offense.
Kansas, I think that's 5.
BYU.
BYU, I've got questions at quarterback after
Yeah,
Retzlaff left, and then Baylor is the other team that people
sure.
probably aren't thinking about, and as we get further into this show together, we'll probably talk more Baylor than we should. Maybe it's kind of like we could with Miami, because our older son went to Baylor and I adjunct there in journalism, and so I pay attention to those guys. And actually, they're opening Friday night with Auburn in Waco, and son George and I are going to go. So I'm looking forward to that.
Two games we didn't mention that actually are both Big 12 games that we talked about, games come this weekend that are under the radar: Auburn and Baylor, and then Georgia Tech at Colorado. Which are 2 interesting games. Again, I guess Colorado could be. Is Salter from my alma mater, Liberty University, going to be the starting quarterback? Has he won the job yet?
Yeah, I don't know that. But Colorado is intriguing because of, well, first of all, just Deion, and then the sort of the ongoing medical saga with him, and just the ongoing drama that attends Deion Sanders. But also no Travis Hunter, which is that's the bigger deal. And then no Shedeur Sanders. And so how is Colorado going to be without those 2 guys? And I guess we'll find out. Let's put it this way. A lot of people have sort of said for the last 2 years, they've sort of kind of said Colorado's not going to get done and been proven wrong. We'll see what happens now, is I guess kind of where I am on that.
And then we got, TCU. You never know what they can do. And then you have Houston, who they have potential. And then let's see what Scott Frost is going to do at UCF.
Yeah.
I mean, there really is so many question marks in that conference. You have no clue.
They play, I mean, what I think of the Big 12 these days, kind of the new look Big 12 without Texas and Oklahoma, and with all the addition of the teams, some of which we've mentioned, these new schools. I think of a lot of close games. It's probably the most wacky, entertaining week in and week out league, and there aren't any of those giant teams that you just know are going to be the winners. And so that's what I think of when I think of the Big 12. And what they do is they play super close games. And so if you have a year where you win a few close games, you're going to find yourself in the Big 12 title game and in the playoff chase.
Yeah, I mean, they're one big league. I mean, clearly, but that one team could come. It really could be anybody, which to me is just a lot of fun, and makes for a really fun season if you're a Big 12 fan. Just enjoy watching that football.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's no question, and that's true, I think, of everything. So we didn't mention a game, and I think we should talk about this because it's going to be in your town, and it's Alabama at Florida State.
Yeah, big deal here in Tallahassee. Oh yeah.
Well, I think I'm intrigued. First of all, if people want to know if Alabama's going to rebound from a rough year, which isn't that rough.
They lost 4 games, including at Vanderbilt.
I know, but let me define rough. You live in Tallahassee.
Yeah, rough year.
That was a rough year in 2024.
I mean, you got to try to go 2-10. I mean, that's unheard of. That's like, Kent State. Kent State goes 2-10. I mean, they're clearly. That's just one of those mystery seasons. I don't think anyone will ever be able to explain. It's just one of those things where people say the locker room or the chemistry. I mean, okay, that would explain that kind of talent at least going 6-6 or something, right? It was such a bizarre year, and Norvell's much better than that, and I think that they're going to be definitely better. I mean, how can you not be? I mean, 2-10, you have to. They'd have to lose to East Texas A&M, who they play, and Kent State, probably the worst team in FBS, who they play, to have that kind of season again. And I don't think they will. But people here, the fan base is not very confident, but they are excited for the Alabama game. Like, it's just a big deal to have them come here, and they're opening a new stadium renovation, and people are, Castellanos is here as a new quarterback from Boston College. So I think there's a lot of, just like anybody else, a lot of transfer portal guys, minus Clemson. But Clemson just has one, the Purdue defensive end that came in. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But think about this here. If Florida State gives them a good game or can beat them, which you never know at home in the opener, and Alabama lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma last year, and not the Oklahoma of your parents, Oklahoma, right? Like a different Oklahoma. Then the momentum they have it changes everything. And this town will turn upside down. Because then after that, Florida State plays, I think it's East Texas A&M, Kent State, and then Virginia. I mean, even if they lose that game and play it close, they're sitting at 3-1 going to the Miami game. So Florida State, I think will have a different year. And Gus Malzahn's here as USC.
That's right. Gus Malzahn, which is, that right there is kind of an indication of the new world of college football. Gus and I have known each other for a long time. And look, he got tired of the head coaching gig as it is now. It's there's so much that you have to do that's not just football. And so now he's going to go, draw up ball plays and call them. And we'll see how they do, right? You got to go.
We're going to see more of that. Yeah. I mean, we saw Chip Kelly leave. We saw Chip Kelly leave a head coaching job to go be an OC. We saw the head coach of Boston College leave his job to go be the DC for the Packers. I think we're going to see more and more of that.
I do too, because it's look, don't get me wrong. These guys make a bazillion dollars a year. So it's not like we should, people should go, put the tiny violins out for them. But it is such a different job than what they probably signed up for when they started their careers and started moving up the coaching ladder, that it's not even, it's not even what it was 5 years ago.
Totally different game.
Yeah. And so we are going to see more of that. All right. So burning question for this year for you, 2025 football season, your burning question.
It goes back to Penn State for me. Like, is Penn State going to get over the hump? And by get over the hump, I mean either win the Big Ten or like actually compete for a national championship. I know the playoffs last year. They won. They beat Boise State, but like, I mean, I just want to see, is Penn State ever going to become Ohio State level? In the Big Ten. That's a big one for me. And then another one that's for me is Brian Kelly going to make it?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah,
at LSU, because if he doesn't quite get in the upper echelon, he's in trouble, I think.
Do they have to get in the playoff in your mind?
I think so. I really do.
I mean, it's
especially
much
four
easier.
SEC teams. When four SEC teams get in and they're not one of them, he's gone.
We're not talking about a 4-team playoff now, right? We're talking about a 12-team playoff with all sorts of availability slots to get into. And the expectations at LSU, right or wrong, and I think they're right, are that you're going to be in that mix and in the playoff more years than not. And they just haven't gotten it done. If they lose to Clemson, and I got to tell you, we're not making picks this week. We'll start doing those kinds of things later. And maybe everybody's going to click their sets off right now. Sorry, guys, I should have waited and made you think we were going to do it. But if they lose to Clemson, then it's unfair, but the whole thing about not winning an opener is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger for him. And I think you mentioned this, I think Clemson's really good. I think they're getting a ton of hype, but I think they're really, really good. And so,
and Tom Allen's their DC, which is a great hire.
I'd make them the favorite to win it. I don't know. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I think Clemson's going to win. I'm not going out on a limb
Reese
there.
Davis has Clemson as his national champion.
Yeah. A couple years ago, he had Michigan as a national champion. Got it right. So
impressive.
I don't know who Reese had last year.
And if I had to add one more to my list, it would be what's going to happen with USC. Like, is Lincoln Riley going to compete in the Big Ten? Because if not, I think he's in trouble too. So I think we got some big name, big money coaches who are on a massive hot seat.
Not as big that's good. Brian Kelly, not on quite the same hot seat probably as Lincoln Riley, but Lincoln Riley clearly hasn't gotten it done. Massive expectations when he left Oklahoma. Yeah. They haven't lived up to it in any way, shape, or form, right? And it's going to take a while. The sting of having Caleb Kelly not Caleb Kelly. Help me out here. I've lost my mind. Caleb Williams. Caleb Kelly's a former Oklahoma linebacker, and he just sort of hit my brain.
I knew it'd go back to Oklahoma or Baylor for you. I knew it.
Yeah, that's right. So, when you're in town, you sort of osmose those things, right? But him having Caleb Williams and never getting to the playoff, he had him for a year with Oklahoma and then 2 years at USC and never getting to the playoff.
And a Heisman season.
Absolutely. I mean, the most dynamic player in the game at that time. So that'll be interesting. I think the guy who's on the biggest hot seat, though, probably at least in terms of big name powers, is the guy at the school Lincoln left. It's Brent Venables. Great guy, tremendous guy. Really, I really appreciate and respect him, but they haven't gotten it done. And last year, they were not very good at all. You mentioned they're not your grandfather's Oklahoma. They somehow won 6 regular season games with some upsets, but they had about everything go against them that could have gone against them, including they spent most of the year with their top 6 receivers out due to injuries, and that will change things for you. But they bet a lot of things on bringing in the quarterback, John Mateer from Washington State, and bringing in his OC with him, Ben Arbuckle. They bet a lot of things on that, but they're going to have to be good. They've got to be good, or I think that is not a fan base where they think they're going to be patient. They think they ought to be at the top of the heap every year.
We didn't mention the Big 12 is Oklahoma State. So Gundy's could be in trouble too. Like the greatest quarterback there, played Barry Sanders and Hartley Dykes and that group, and has been their head coach forever, right? Since Les Miles.
Took a big pay cut after that horrible year when they did not win a single Big 12 game in 2024. Big pay cut to stick around. And not only did they turn most of the roster over, they turned the entire coaching staff other than him over. It's all new. So nobody really knows what to think about what's going to happen in Stillwater. But you're right. Now, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Mike Gundy because he's been there 20 years, 21 years, something like that now as a head coach. You're right. Legendary in terms of the fact that he was a homegrown guy, quarterback there. They've never had the sustained success in their history except under him. I mean, they've had the best success ever under him. But it was the few times it's bad, it's really, really bad. And he doesn't handle it well. And he didn't handle it well last year. And I think they thought going into the Big 12, the new Big 12 era, that why shouldn't we be the big dogs? And you look at them and you think about it, and it makes sense. And instead, they were terrible. So I think you're right. I would say this: I don't know if I'd put him on the hot seat, but I do think, I think I would put him on the hot seat. I don't know if it's the same seat as Venables, but
yeah, it's the famous clear out your staff, and that gives you one more year. Right, mm-hmm. The famous fire the OC, it's legendary in college football, and that gives you one more year.
Well, who would? So my burning question is, I don't know if it's a burning question, but it's the most fascinating thing this year for me, and I mentioned it a little bit ago, is what is 750-year-old Bill Belichick going to do at North Carolina? Never mind the fact that he's got a 24-year-old girlfriend or whatever, but 73, 70, I don't know if he's turned 74 yet, whatever. He's essentially Nick Saban's age, jumping into college coaching when Nick got out a couple of years ago. And the hype around him is huge, and it's because ESPN and others sense a great story, and they're going to ride it, much like we saw with Colorado 2 years ago when Deion was first there. They're going to ride that story because we'll all watch. But what do you think actually happens in Chapel Hill in terms of wins and losses in football, and a football program in 2025 and really kind of beyond?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too. I think they'll be buttoned up and they'll play good defense. He's got some decent players in too. I don't think they're going to compete for the ACC championship, but I think they'll keep. They sold out their season tickets.
Yeah,
Which never happens outside of the Dean Dome, in North Carolina and Chapel Hill. So I think that they will keep the fans there and keep them interested. And I think they're going to win their in-state games. They'll beat NC State. They'll beat Duke. The Manny's done a great job, and Duke will probably be decent too. But I think they'll win those games, and that will give some momentum. And they care about that there. So I think he's going to be successful. But by successful, let's caveat that as North Carolina successful. Not Clemson successful.
Yeah. First, you got to return them to relevance. And, that's one of the things that happened in Boulder is suddenly they were relevant. Then you got to win, and that didn't really happen until year 2 at any great level. And it's not great. It's not Bill McCartney great. Yeah, they're average, but they've been relevant. And I don't know if Colorado slips back from relevancy. But, I mean, North Carolina, at least in terms of they're in the conversation now, the question is, can you win enough to be really actually relevant? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. And Mac Brown seemed like the opposite of that. It was like a nice story for a minute, but it was just one of those things where it seemed like you were holding on to something. Belichick feels different to me than that.
Mac Brown, before he went to Texas, people forget they won 10 games and they were actually, really good. In the 90s, and then he goes to Texas and obviously had tremendous success there before it fell off. But in the second act in Chapel Hill didn't go as well. In the last couple of years, he seemed tired, and the program. So we'll see, because the other part of that is, and they're all in with Bill Belichick now, but that wasn't a kind of a funky hiring process with like issues with who's actually going to do the hiring. Is it a regent sort of spearheading this, and the ADs, Bubba Cunningham is like kind of cut out of the process, and so it's to me there's a lot of TBD going on with
definitely
with that
and
whole
it
deal.
could really go down in flames. I mean, I think it could go either direction. You're going to see like relevance, like they're going to win 9 games, beat NC State, beat Wake, beat Duke, and then, or it could just be really bad. I think, yeah.
All right. Other than Miami, Notre Dame, other than Texas, Ohio State, and other than Alabama, Florida State, because you're in Tallahassee, what's the one game you might want to see this weekend?
Georgia Tech, Colorado.
You mentioned that one.
Yeah, that interests me a lot. Hayes King's going to be healthy for the first time in a long time. He's such a gamer. I think he's the best player in college football nobody knows about. Because he plays for Georgia Tech. And until you watched the Georgia game over Thanksgiving last year, a lot of people just didn't know who he was. I think he's really great. If I had to give one more, just because I'm such a blue blood guy and I just can't get over my blue blood bias, even though they're barely blue blood anymore, it doesn't sound like the greatest game in the world, but Nebraska-Cincinnati.
I was going there.
I'm just like, is Matt Rule going to get them better? So they come out and can win opening game. And Colorado's not bad, or excuse me, Cincinnati's not bad, but they can come out and win that opening game. It's like, okay, there's hope in Lincoln, kind of idea.
Yeah, no, I think that was the one, and that's a Thursday night game, y'all. If you don't have your schedule set up, that's Thursday night, 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 Central, and so I think that would be that's one I want to watch too. I'm also a Matt Rule fan. Sure. And so I want him to get it done. And I'm just continuously amazed that nobody can really get it done at Nebraska. I'm continuously amazed by that. And I'll tell you, not that I think they're going to ever be the mid-90s Huskers, the national powerhouse. Those days are gone. But they were scrabbling to beat mediocre Big Ten opponents for all those years and losing.
I think they beat Iowa.
Couldn't get to bowl games. Exactly. Yeah. And you were in the Big Ten West, which was the easier division, and you couldn't even get near contending in that division. And flabbergasting to me that you can't do that. I'm not asking you to be Tom Osborne's Huskers. Now you got a 12-team playoff, and if you can just have Indiana was in the playoff last year. How in the world can Indiana be in the playoff and Nebraska can't sniff relevancy?
So funny. Yeah, exactly. That's the question. How can Indiana be in the playoff and Nebraska can't? That's the burning question right there of all for years.
Well, I hope Matt Rule's able to answer that in a positive way, and we'll just see. So plenty of questions, no answers. There won't be any answers this weekend either, but we'll think there are, and
exactly.
We will overdo it because that's what we always do. But to me, I'll just tell you this: when it comes to the first weekend. I said it earlier. I always thought of it as a football palooza. And so when I was covering the sport for USA Today, if I could work the schedule out, I'd cover a Thursday game. And if I could do a Friday game, I would, but I'd definitely cover a Saturday game. And then if I could cover either the Sunday or that Labor Day game, I would do that too. And some of them weren't the greatest of games, but nobody cared because everybody was just excited that football was back.
Yeah, and exactly. That's why I watched week 0, right? It's back.
That's right. Well, it was either that or watch the third team quarterback for the Rams playing whoever in a preseason game that didn't matter if the first teamers were playing. So all right, well, hey, that's probably good enough for us to get started. We need to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, I'm really looking forward to this. Let me just say this: we're going to have a lot of fun this football season. There'll be a slightly different flavor when it's without Brad, but we'll bring him in and have a great time. And I just love hearing kind of what you're going to bring to the table too, Dean. It's been fun already. So, but we're going to take a break, kind of go in the locker room, come back for the second half, and in the second half we will talk. Actually, our favorite subject. I love college football, but I love Jesus a whole lot more, and I know that's true for you too. So we'll be right back with the second half of Gridiron and the Gospel of Faith in College Football podcast. Welcome back to Gridiron and the Gospel of Faith in College Football podcast. The second half starts right now, and it's the part that I love the best, faith, because we get to talk about Jesus Christ and Dean, you are a pastor, and I'm honored that I get to be a pastor, that the Lord's called me to be a pastor too. Both of us love college football, but this half is always about faith. And so I was so appreciated Brad, as another former college football journalist, and his desire to talk about Jesus. And you've been on this podcast. You've been on both halves of the podcast as a guest. And so you've talked faith with us and football too. But let's just talk about several different things, including how you help people balance faith in a football town, because I think that's really interesting. And, I've not pastored in a college football town at this point. I think that's really interesting, and I'd love to talk about that. But I also know that just as we start the 2025 season, you've got some thoughts, and we talked about this in our extensive pre-show production. You've got some thoughts about sort of, kind of what comes to your mind when you think about faith as we head into a 2025 football season.
It's one of those things where faith, I think, can be a great opportunity during football season or a great obstacle.
What do you mean by that?
And by obstacle, I mean that faith is so intertwined into football, high school football, college football. Every team prays before the game. It's common to point to the sky when you score a touchdown. You hear commonly people say things like faith, family, football. Those are the three most important things. And the question is, that's a wonderful thing. And you go, yeah, amen. But what do they mean by faith?
It can be kind of vague.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't have faith in faith. Like, our faith is not suspended in the air, detached from something. It's not a good luck charm. Our faith has an object, and his name is Jesus. And he truly is the Messiah, the Son of God. So I worry sometimes that a generic faith can actually keep people from seeing the true faith that is understood in Christ. So they think they're doing great because they, are faith driven, or we have a faith, our football program is faith driven. I've hardly ever seen a head coach that doesn't claim to be a Christian. And by that, it means he went to FCA camp one time, or he's not anti, like he's for it, like kind of idea. So I want to see coaches out there, and I'm so thankful for coaches, assistant coaches, analysts, that people know they're a believer. And by a believer, I don't mean a random believer, like generic term, like where you have the word believe, as a decoration in your house on a picture. I mean, actually believers in the one true God. James wrote in James chapter 2, you believe there's one God. Okay, great. So does the devil, right? That generic theism's not enough. It should point us to our need for Christ, right? Because we have an understanding of who God is that shows us our need, that we're sinners, that need a savior. Because God is holy and he won't let sin go unpunished. What kind of God would that be? And in our rebellion against God, we have said, God, no thanks. I don't want you. I want your stuff instead. And the remedy for that is not for us to be generic faith people, but it's to trust in the one God has sent, Jesus, to be the one who takes on our sin for us, and that he rose from the grave. So the opportunity side is, wow, for whatever reason, there's an open door. I think it's the Lord is the reason, honestly, but there's an open door with so many athletes. Look at high school football. How many go have a pregame meal at a church in small towns before a game, right? How many college football programs have a chaplain? Have a coach that lets an evangelical walk in the door in the hotel the night before the game and give a talk, right? Like, what an opportunity for these things. So I would encourage our listeners. out there to be praying for those opportunities, for your favorite football team. When you think of your team, don't just be praying for a win, but also be praying for the opportunity for players to trust in Christ, to make a difference on campus, and for the Christian players to actually be Christian, right? To actually follow Jesus and not some generic faith kind of idea. So that's what comes to mind.
The same for the Christian coaches, right? It can be such a pressure to win at any of those levels, even at the high school level.
Oh, that I can't even fathom. Yeah, the pressure they're under. Yeah.
So speaking of chaplains, I guess not like I'm breaking any news, because not like anybody cares, but I'm gonna serve as one of the chaplains of the football team here in the high school in Texas that we're a part of, and I'm excited about it. Except I'm a bad chaplain. Let me tell you why. Because their first game's Friday night, and Friday night I'm going over to Waco to watch a college football game. So,
put in the backup.
If our boys lose, they'll probably blame me for not being there.
For real,
pray them on in.
I totally would.
Hey, so let me tell you a quick story. I was when Gus Malzahn, I've known each other for a long time. And so when he was coaching UCF a couple of years ago, they played at Oklahoma, their first year in the Big 12. I guess Oklahoma's last year in the Big 12. And had the opportunity to give a devotion to the UCF football team on Friday night. And I was grateful for that opportunity, right? And so the next day, I stood on the sidelines with UCF, which was a little odd because I know a lot of people in Norman, Oklahoma, and I don't wear crimson but I don't usually stand on the other sideline with another
sure.
team, right? So, but I stood on the other sideline with the UCF football team, and right before the game, the kicker comes up, and his name was Colton Boomer, which is a great name if you're playing at Oklahoma.
That
right?
is a great Oklahoma name. You might as well be named Drake Stoops.
But he was the kicker for UCF. If he was in Crimson that day, it would have been like, that's unbelievable. He comes up and he just said, "Hey, would you pray with me, play for me?" And I was like, "Okay." And so I put my arm over his shoulder pads, and he's a kicker, so he's not very big. Like, I'm bigger than he is, right? And I'm not very big. And great kid, by the way, as I come to find out. So I prayed for him. And I just prayed he wouldn't get hurt and that he'd be able to perform well and just, take the things he learned in practice and that kind of stuff. And so I enjoyed, I was grateful for the opportunity to do that. Then the game is a pretty good game, better than you would have expected. And at the end of the game, he's got a kick to win it.
Oh.
And I thought to myself, yeah, if they win this game, people are going to blame me.
Hey, James 5, the prayer of a righteous man. There it is.
Yeah. Well, apparently I wasn't righteous enough.
Man, unconfessed sin in your life. Is that what's going on?
So the next day I preached at a friend's church in Norman and basically told that story. And I just said, and I was really kind of concerned that he was about to hit that. And I had prayed him to a win over your Sooners. So
That's
anyway,
a great story.
I don't really know where I was going with that, but there you go. So, but I don't know where I was going with that. So
it's a great story. Yeah. Talking about chaplains and faith. And yeah, it's great.
I had the opportunity, and I promise you we're not going to we probably won't over talk about FSU, although you have plenty of connections with the athletic department who are, followers of Christ who are at City Church and just things like that. And I'm not going to over talk about Baylor. And, we did live in Oklahoma for a long time, but I have a chance to meet Kevin Washington and get to know him a little bit. He's the new athletics chaplain at Baylor. He came from Texas. He is a tremendous guy, and he loves Jesus, and he's having an impact already. Although he's not kind of overseeing all of the sports programs, so he's not maybe able to get into one team the same. But I've already learned a ton from him. And those guys, when they are actually really serious about following Jesus, can have a tremendous impact.
Absolutely.
On
an opportunity.
Yeah, these students, these players. And so I just have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And I look forward to getting to know him.
When you have a chaplain who's a Jesus guy more than a faith family football guy,
mm-hmm.
the opportunity is incredible.
Typically when you tell me if I'm wrong, and this goes back to where you were, faith, family, football, what I find is that the last word is far and away the biggest, and the other two sometimes are just marketing. And that's probably a little unfair, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, we want to be fair, but it's easy for that. It's easy for that to be true.
Mm.
And your Christian coaches, like your Bible believing evangelical coaches, will tell you that. Oh yeah, and they get frustrated by it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so I kind of teased this a little bit ago, but you have pastored in a hotbed of college football for a long time now and grew up in that hotbed, but now you're pastoring there. You do have people from the athletic department who are a part of your church, and there's some unique pressures, I think, that probably you see in their lives that maybe most of us don't see. But I want to ask you about what it's like for fans when things are going well and when they're not going well. And we've talked about this before, but I want to ask you what it's like when you have, you've got, I don't know, a basketball coach or an assistant football coach in the congregation, and you may have had either in both of those, and it's not going well. What is that like, and how do you find yourself sometimes in the middle of trying to, be supportive? What does that look like?
Yeah, you don't want to say too much, because they feel terrible, so it's like, hey, how you doing? But the guys who are believers, yes, they're invested in it, but it's not the end of the world. They're still going to be at church tomorrow, but they're going to be at church on Sunday morning. And I think that's always a great testimony to their families and to other people. As yes, this is my job. Yes, it matters to me. I know it matters to you as a fan, but this is the most important thing to me. So I just kind of try to more just let them know that haven't forgotten about them, that they're on my mind. So maybe on Monday or Tuesday, I might send them a text and go, hey, man, just checking on you, hanging in there, kind of thing. You never want anyone to think that you've forgotten about them. Yeah, and so I'm not the guy that's going to text them at 12:01 after a game, but I'll the next day, a couple days later, I'll just kind of check in, sort of thing with some of the guys I know a little bit better, I have more of a relationship with, and also just want to encourage them when they really are letting their light shine, and just the impact and the influence it has on our church community when just lost a game on a last second field goal, and then you're at church the next morning serving or sitting with your family in the second row is pretty powerful. So that's kind of how I approach it. And also you see the humanity of it all. When I was on the podcast a couple of years ago with you and Brad, we talked about that. Like when you're in a college town and you're a pastor, you're connected to athletes and coaches and administrators and people that want to win more than you do because their livelihood depends on it. That you see the humanity of it all. And, you're still a huge football fan and love it and follow it and are all about it. And, you yell as loud as anybody. When your team scores, you still go, oh, wait, that's not just the quarterback. That's this guy that goes to your church. That's this guy who's a believer. So it's, and also you don't want people to lose their jobs because you love and you care about them. You don't want them to have to move their family somewhere. They're doing great in school and they're adjusted well to life in Tallahassee or whatever city you live in. So there's those type of things that really are factors that you remember a little bit more when you're connected.
It's not just the head coach. It's not just the assistant coaches who might be making close to $1 million a year, or some of them more than $1 million a year, or several $100,000 or whatever. It's there's dozens and dozens when it comes to college football, dozens and dozens of support personnel that could flip over if there's a head coaching change. And those guys are making a whole lot less. They're a lot more kind of middle class, like the vast majority of the folk who are listening and us.
Yeah, working 90 hours a week and making middle class salaries, kind of thing, 100 hours a week, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so I didn't, as a journalist, you would get to know people, and it was different than as a pastor. Right. But you get to know people, and some of them you really begin to care about. And then you would just see when things were starting to go poorly or go sideways, and you'd realize, okay, this is about to be an upheaval thing. There's some coaching friends I know in the business. Well, one of them is Gus Malzahn. I watched sort of the Auburn saga unfold with him over several years, and that's just Auburn fans. I love you, but you guys are crazy, and you guys know that. But you watch sort of the goods and the bads, all about whether you won or lost. And I understand that's the name of the game. And you watch sort of like I'm good friends with Gus's wife, Christy, and you watch sort of how the pressures can eat at them and some of the assistants and wives and all of that. And it's hard. It's hard. And I guess that'd be one of the things I would say is, hey, y'all, most of y'all are listening to this at this point are probably Christ followers, and you're definitely college football fans if you're still listening at this point in the podcast. Let me just say this. As you're invested deeply in your favorite team, whether it's Alabama or Auburn or Oklahoma or Florida State or Miami or whatever, man, keep in mind these are real people, which is kind of where you were going before, right? And Christ followers, they're made in the image of God, and they're struggling with a bazillion things we don't know the first thing about. We also don't really know how and why they didn't win half the time, right? That's the other thing.
Yeah, it's way above the average fan's pay grade. It's what really happened.
Why didn't he run the ball there? They have 18 reasons why it went the way it did, and we don't know any of them.
Yeah, it's talking about Florida State going 2-10. I was like, I don't explain that, right? And I don't think anyone can perfectly explain that, but I don't think it'll happen again.
Yeah. Well, all right. So, Dean, let me ask you this: high school football team. We think our team here at Fairfield High School is going to be pretty good this year. We'll see, right? We the Eagles. What advice would you give a rookie chaplain?
I would,
other than don't miss the first game.
Yeah, I would try to invest in the coaches because they're the influencers. Yeah, and if you get any chance you can get around the players, they'll be a little skeptical at first, but at least get to know them and know some of the older guys by name. That kind of idea, and then be their biggest fan. Be a big supporter of them and just be there, but get to know the coaches. I think that's what I would do, because those are the ones that are going to influence the influence that high school football coaches have on young men is unbelievable. I mean, I think one of the greatest ministries in the world is being a high school coach, not just football, but any sport, because the access you have, you're with them all the time. And a lot of times you're the father figure to those people. So, and a lot of coaches, I know Texas is probably a different ballgame, but a lot of coaches don't get paid anywhere near what they, what the time they put in. I don't know what it's like in Fairfield either, but that's just reality. And if they did get paid, it doesn't make it any easier, So, in terms of the pressure and those type of things, so I would just, I'd really go, okay, how can I get to know these guys? And there's a couple of believers on the staff, know that they have an ally, and find ways to pastor the coaches.
Yeah, one of the great things we have going for us in Fairfield is that the head football coach, who's also the athletic director of the school district, is a devoted Christ follower.
Awesome.
And I like the fact that he's actually a part of our church.
It's great.
But I love that. And if he were at another church, I'd still be super glad that he's he loves Jesus more than he loves football. And so I love that. So and he's got, one of the things I love, he's got a Thursday morning coaches Bible study that they don't have to attend, but a lot of them do. And it's not just for football coaches, it's for other coaches in the district, other sports. But I love that. And so, it's at 7 a.m. they gather and they spend 40 minutes or so before they all have to peel off to wherever they got to go for the school day. And, last year they walked through the Gospel of Mark together. I love that.
That's neat.
And so that's an example of kind of what you're talking about. If you have some coaches who are Christ followers, he's able to pour into the other coaches, and that's tremendous. And then hopefully they'll pour into the players, to the students. I'd love that.
It's good stuff.
Well, we've got a lot of stuff we can do and a lot of stuff we can talk about, but really I just kind of to whet people's appetite and just say, hey, season 3, Gridiron and the Gospel, we're going to have a little bit of change in that Brad Edwards won't be here every week, but we do plan to drop weekly episodes on Mondays, and we do plan, and Brad plans to pop in 3 or 4 times this season and hang out with us. But I'm really grateful, Dean, that you would be willing to invest the time that it takes to be a part of this podcast effort with me, because this is a labor of love for me. I love college football, I love Jesus, and it's just kind of fun to be able to talk about both at the same time.
Absolutely, I'm really excited to be a part of it and thankful for the invitation, and excited to talk ball and see how all things ultimately point us to Christ.
Absolutely. So, Dean, if you don't mind, what's your Twitter handle, your X handle?
It's just my name, Dean Inserra, Inserra.
Yeah. I'll tell you guys something real quick about that in a second, but mine is at George Schroeder. So reach out to us on X at Dean Inserra or at George Schroeder. And you can also email us at gridirongospelpod@gmail.com. And I guess I should say too, on X or Instagram at gridiron_gospel, but, give us a follow on those spots. Reach out to us at the email. And then also, if you like what you're hearing and you haven't subscribed. We're on all the podcast apps. And so would love to have you there. I guess I need to say this, though, because I teased it. When my lovely wife, Shannon, first heard that Dean and Sarah was coming over to our house, we were going to go, I think, did we go to a TCU football game? Is that what we did?
Baylor, a great rivalry.
TCU Baylor.
Historic rivalry.
That's right. We were going to go to a game together, and you and I already knew each other. And so I said, yeah, Dean and Sarah. And she was waiting for Sarah to show up, your wife, she thought.
Yeah, her name's Chrissy. It is not Sarah. There's just one of me.
So I thought you said it was Dean and Sarah. I said, well, it is. Well, where's Sarah?
When I was a kid, back in the old intercom system, now they just call the teacher on the phone. About the old intercom system, they came on the loudspeaker and said, will you please send Dean and Sarah to the office?
I bet that happened a lot.
Yeah, me and a girl named Sarah walked down in the office. They looked at her and they said, what are you doing here? They said, I thought you called me. So that's been going on our whole lives. So yeah, but I'm thrilled to talk football and talk all these things. So also we'll get a little debate going. We'll do we'll make our top 5 favorite traditions, our best rivalries. We'll get the folks a little angry out there, because nothing gets passion stirred up like college football lists and debates and those type of things.
That's right. And we're definitely going to do that. And I also know that, because you and I won't agree on everything for sure. And you've got some definite uniform thoughts, and we'll get into that. And then we will make picks. I just, and we should have been ready for week 1. I just wasn't ready, but y'all listeners, we will make picks. We wimped out this week, and that's my fault. So, hey, I appreciate you guys listening. I'm really looking forward to the 2025 season, college football season, but also of Gridiron and the Gospel. So tune in next week for more Gridiron and the Gospel, a faith and college football podcast.